In the world of the most influential band, one woman always hated them. But no one imagined that her level of selfishness and hatred with the band will be responsible for the biggest breakup in history. The breakup of the Beatles.
It's difficult starting right from scratch with Yoko there, because I started out writing songs about white walls.
Whenever Paul was asked about the actual reason for the breakup of the Beatles, he openly expressed how the presence of Yoko Ono, John Lennon's beloved girlfriend, was responsible for it. Sometimes she intentionally disturbed the band by sitting on their precious instruments.
Of Yoko sitting on one of the amps.
Right.
You know, excuse me, that's my amp.
And sometimes irritated them by shouting in the studio like a 3-year-old kid.
We were just fuming.
Right.
And sulking and being kind of, you know.
Finally, Yoko dressing up in her real outfit, which, however, when Yoko was asked about the same question, she never hesitated about breaking the Beatles apart.
Go.
Is it true that you were responsible of the split of the Beatles? Well, then I must be a very powerful woman.
She wanted them to separate because she considered all 4 members of the band too powerful.
It's very difficult for 4 artists who are so brilliant and talented to be together and do everything together, you know? I mean, just impossible almost. So whatever they were doing was almost miraculous, you know?
And clarified her stand as a natural process.
And maybe we were the catalyst, but...
She knew exactly who the Beatles were and how much money that would bring in, and how a relationship would benefit her.
John was hopelessly in love with Yoko.
Sure, John was hopelessly in love with Yoko, because of which he was ready to leave his best friends behind.
I know.
Who broke it up? John did. Yeah.
But without the rest of the band members, John's reputation was breaking apart, yet with an evil smile, she was loving every bit of it.
And everybody's got to run, and ain't nobody gonna hold you, and everybody needs someone. Don't try to go alone.
This video will take you through the evil mindset of Yoko Ono, who captured John's mind to ruthlessly demolish the most iconic band in human history, and then use him to establish her irritating career. This also gave her the name the Dragon Lady, which defines a woman who gets angry when people do not follow exactly what she wants.
You've even been called the Dragon Lady, who...
Yes.
The video will also show you what exactly she did in the studio that forced the rest of the band members or best friends to lose each other, that ultimately became the reason for John's murder. And how she selfishly sympathized on John's blood-stained glasses and used them to launch her first solo successful album. Even, according to some rumors, selling them for £11,000.
Speaking words of wisdom, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
Imagine actually believing she had never heard of the Beatles before meeting John. After the Beatles breakup, in this interview, you can clearly see how confidently she admits never knowing about the Beatles, and brags about meeting John Lennon as any other artist.
I just met him as another artist and all that, and I didn't, you know...
However, in the book of The Beatles Diary Volume 1, she was not only aware about the group, but even knew the exact location of their houses. In fact, she began her first meeting with the group by heading straight towards Paul McCartney's house in London. Her objective behind knocking at his door was to obtain the original lyrics of the Beatles song, The Word.
Say the word, you'll be free.
Yoko explained that she needed the lyrics for a book that music theorist John Cage was working on. This means that she was well aware about the Beatles songs and lied about never knowing about them.
You were a Beatles fan before, or would you say you were a Lennon fan before?
Neither.
Neither.
As Paul was very private about his work, he suggested Yoko to ask John Lennon about the same. Fortunately, John gave her the actual handwritten lyrics of the Word song. But what John failed to realize is that Yoko was one hell of a stalker than any other Beatle fan in the world. And after getting the opportunity to receive help from John, she had a bigger plan in mind.
Did you remember falling in love? Not quite, no. It just sort of happens.
Then and there, Yoko realized that out of all the 4 members, John is the one who could be easily pleased. Not to mention, when John wrote the word song, it was entirely based on what the meaning of love John considers. John gave the concept of love as the fundamental spirit that unites us all, something that has the answer to everything. And this weakness of John turned out to be Yoko's biggest advantage.
It's like
Pure sound. It's pure sound. Well, anything. Wow, that's howling.
When she said, I cried, yes, such a beautiful and moving performance. Yoko communicated the whole universe with that howl. Now John even made fun of Yoko's voice himself. He knew how disturbing and destructive her participation would be for the Beatles. After all, during that time, the Beatles were on the lips of every person in the world. They had their own cartoon series and were more famous than Jesus. John himself said this in 1966, "We are more popular than Jesus now. I don't know which will go first, rock and roll or Christianity." Nonetheless, as he was hopelessly in love with her, John never hesitated defending Yoko's image in the public and supported her like a shadow in the dark.
Because how could one girl split the Beatles, or one woman? You know? The Beatles were drifting apart on their own. You know?
But to receive this level of support from John, Yoko had to do things that no one could imagine. Surprisingly, the Dragon Lady played her game well, and that game began with this. The footage you are looking at is from one of the most iconic performance art shows in 1964, and it was performed by Yoko herself in Japan. They called it Cut Piece Event, where the audience is allowed to cut any piece of her clothes and give it to their loved ones as a form of remembrance or sacrifice made during the World War II. Now, John was a die-hard fan of performance art exhibitions and paintings that takes you to another world. And as Yoko shared the same passion, she started seducing John with her artwork. Specifically speaking, after their first meeting, Yoko began sending letters directly to John's home, with pieces of her finest conceptual artworks. Luckily for her, John started appreciating the letters and secretly began talking to Yoko on his personal telephone. However, what both of them failed to realize is that John's wife, Cynthia Powell, was keeping a close eye on all his movements. After noticing Yoko calling on their telephone, Cynthia asked John why Yoko is telephoning them at home. John quickly defended her calls by giving a fake reason, stating that she is just a woman who wants to extract money from him for her art show. But in the background, John was actually sponsoring Yoko's art show in Lisson Gallery in London. The situation worsened when in May 1968, John's wife was on a holiday in Greece. By considering this as a perfect opportunity, John invited Yoko to his home and made love at dawn. But why would Yoko destroy a healthy marriage? John already had a 5-year-old child at that time. Then why she dared to wear Cynthia's bathrobe and drink tea in front of her like a Hollywood movie when Cynthia returned from Greece? Well, being born in Tokyo, Japan, and experiencing the nuclear bomb attack in World War II, Yoko, for decades, was on a mission to get back on her feet. And there were times when she had to beg for food while pulling her belongings on a wheelbarrow. So in almost 30 years of struggle, this was Yoko's perfect opportunity to get anything she wants. John was completely in her control, he was about to divorce his wife, and Yoko was also pregnant with John's child. And no matter what happens next, the Dragon Lady would not let anyone come in between them. Even if it's his best friends from the Beatles, she would do anything to run John on her fingertips.
I have trouble with English.
Can we please give her the credit for all the nice music that George made and Ringo made and Paul made and I've made since they broke up? If she did it.
Giving her credit for the music after the Beatles is like giving Osama bin Laden credit for NYC's new skyline. Turns out, her master plan was actually working. The Beatles' studio was like a temple for them. A place where they not only rehearse, record, or create a legendary song, but also sit together to restore their energy. A perfect place that gave them unforgettable peace than the world outside. This is why they never allowed family members in the studios so that they could remain focused. However, what would happen if their precious temple gets taken over by someone they never wanted? In 1968, while rehearsing for the song John simply brought Yoko Ono in the studio. So no introduction from John, nothing. It was just a woman with John sitting on their amp and not saying even a single word.
We didn't welcome Yoko in the studio, but actually sit in the studio with us. It was like, no, excuse me, we're working.
Most importantly, John was perfectly aware about this rule. A rule that always bound the members of the band together. But by breaking the most powerful pillar of the room, John brought destruction to their future.
It might have been better if he'd been a little bit more diplomatic and sort of said, hey guys, you know, I'd love her to be, I really love her and I just want to be near her all the time.
Right.
But we had to figure that out.
Now, John always considered Paul as one of his biggest competitors. In an interview, he also said, "Throughout my career, I have selected to work with only two people, Paul McCartney and Yoko Ono. That ain't bad picking."
When the audience has certain favorites, maybe they like Paul more than they like John or something like that.
On the other hand, Paul worshipped his music more than anyone else. And he always knew that John will never tolerate anyone interrupting their music sessions. However, this time it was something that was never witnessed before. Paul soon realized the actual destructive force in the room. And that destructive force was not John, it was his girlfriend Yoko Ono, who intentionally wanted to let this happen. Paul could see that in her eyes.
I need somebody help, not just anybody.
Interestingly, Paul was exactly right, because a few decades later, she even made fun of the Beatles' music, calling their Yellow Submarine song as too simplistic. The same song that now received 113 million views.
Marine and a few other songs, the lyrics, you know. I thought it was kind of simplistic, you know. But still I felt that the music, the structure of music, the form of music was a little bit too simplistic. And, you know, the beat is always the same, you know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know. So.
She refers to the Beatles' music as simplistic, yet what has she ever written that even comes close to that brilliant simplicity? Nothing, that's what. Too simplistic as opposed to her. Furthermore, she wanted John to separate from the band and build his own identity with Yoko, a fact that she also admitted later.
Friends, and I think they just outgrew the period that they were in.
Nevertheless, Paul was not ready to give up on his best friend. He was ready to fight for John and not let Yoko separate the band from each other. But then, Paul did not realize the consequences of this decision. Instead of communicating directly with John about keeping Yoko out, Paul tried to adjust with their awkward relationship. However, the more he tried to adjust with her presence, the more frustrating it became. And as days went by, Yoko became more irritating than ever before. Yoko Ono was like a disaster in the studio, a serious dent in the Beatles' reputation. The rest of the band members were so frustrated by her presence that there was a moment when lead guitarist George Harrison got into a shouting match with John after Yoko took George's chocolate digestive biscuits without asking. George didn't want her in the studio either. She ate all his cookies, lol.
Yoko sat in that very chair.
We are talking about the same band that once shared the bathroom together. In the year 2000 interview, Paul said, "In the old days, we had the biggest hotel suites, the whole floor of a hotel, and the four of us would end up in the bathroom just to be with each other. And now they are becoming one of their biggest enemies because of one woman that John supports."
Don't wanna leave her now. You know I believe in how.
Yet, Paul made one last attempt to reunite the band and requested all the members to rehearse for their next live concert. Sadly, with John's increasing addiction with heroin and Harrison warning to leave the group because of Yoko's presence, they were able to perform only at the rooftop of the Apple's headquarters in London. But no one imagined that this would be their last time together. A few months after their rooftop performance, John changed his name from John Lennon to John Ono Lennon. Adding Yoko's name in the middle made everyone realize that John is not going to listen to the rest of the band members. The situation worsened when Ono met with a car accident and John arranged a king-size bed for her in the studio. It was at that moment Paul and Harrison realized that soon they need to do something about Yoko, otherwise everything will come to an end. Surprisingly, Yoko never took any action to stand for the Beatles. She never said to Harrison or any member that she would go out of the studio so that they can rehearse. She never advised John spend more time with his best friends, and she never cared what the rest of the band members think. She was just resting in the bed, watching her master plan go live. And just when the relationship between the Beatles reached its weakest stage, John made sure to clear the thoughts. On September 1969, John simply entered the room at Apple headquarters where the rest of the band members were present for the meeting. He walked towards them and said he was leaving the Beatles, just what Yoko always wanted.
But there was a meeting where John came in and said, "Hey guys, I'm leaving the group."
With thousands of people gathered outside, no one could believe that the Beatles were actually signing the agreement of separation. But inside the room, the best friends were already separated beyond agreement, and Yoko was having the best moment of her life.
How can you get bored doing what you did?
Because it was not going anywhere, you know?
As she finally had complete control of John's mind, she began by using him for her inappropriate and disturbing music that no one wanted to hear. Audience was clearly laughing at her. Even the host of the show was laughing at her performance, asking John twice if they should really perform on Saturday with Yoko's disturbing voice. Also hinting Yoko to never invite her again.
How dare you foreigners walk in here and induce hysteria into our studio? It's frightening.
John's later collaboration with Chuck Berry further destroyed his reputation when Yoko hammered their performance with her annoying voice in the background. But, as always, the Dragon Lady never cared what the world thinks about her. Soon she shifted John's mindset towards protesting for world peace, which eventually brought him closer to his death. When Mark David Chapman was asked about the reason why he shot John, he said he never wanted to kill John. In fact, he was one of his biggest fans. But his mindset shifted towards shooting him when John left Beatles and believed only in Yoko and himself. Yet, he talked about world peace. In his words, Mark said, "I would listen to this music and I would get angry at him for saying, in the song God, that he didn't believe in God, that he just believed in him and Yoko, and that he didn't believe in the Beatles." This was another thing that angered me. Even though this record had been done at least 10 years previously, I just wanted to scream out loud, who does he think he is, saying these things about God and heaven and the Beatles, saying that he doesn't believe in Jesus and things like that. At that point, my mind was going through a total blackness of anger and rage. So I bought the Lennon book home, into this The Cather in the Rye milieu, where my mindset is Holden Caulfield and antiphoniness.
John came out, and he looked at me, and I think he recognized, here's the fella that I signed the album earlier. And he walked past me. I took 5 steps toward the street, turned, and fired 5 shots into his back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. We'd like to carry on now with the song.
So this makes it clear that if Yoko did not become selfish enough to destroy the Beatles, then John would have been alive today. But what she did after John's murder will make you hate her more than ever before. The image of the blood-stained glass you are looking at is the one that John wore on the day of his murder. And above it is the name of Yoko's first solo album that she created to capitalize on John's murder. Though no one ever liked her voice, but by taking advantage of John's murder, Yoko's first solo album reached number 49 on the US Billboard 200 Albums chart. Once she realized John's murder stuff are so valuable, she again came with the exhibition of John's blood-stained bag, to which the ex-Beatle fans had enough and responded with great anger. The person in this position over Lennon's legacy should protect their memory and reputation, not bring it into disrepute. Years ago, she sold replicas of the blood-stained glasses and shirt he was wearing when he was shot. The shirt for £16,000 and the glasses for £11,000. It was exploitation almost beyond belief. Nevertheless, even today, she continues to annoy people with her irritating and vulgar voice. If she was being electrocuted by the microphone, how would anyone know? Even the bald guy in the back is making fun of her by pointing to his friend. Yoko's singing is a miracle. My dad has been paralyzed from the waist down for 17 years. When I played this song, he said enough. Stood up, walked over and turned it off. Thank you, Yoko. Maybe that's how some legendary bands are destined to end. But the Beatles did not deserve to be ended on the hands of a super selfish woman. Fans loved them so much that they used to sleep at the airport just to get a glimpse of them when they land.
Sleep claimed the girls at last. They dreamt of their heroes winging the Atlantic.
Thousands were fainted while risking their lives.
Every day, girl, always on my mind.
Cried their heart out and shouted to the level that could break all windows.
Here they come.
While the rest of the fans had to literally cover their ears from the noise. Unfortunately, Yoko Ono destroyed them so badly that even after offering millions of dollars for a reunion, the Beatles could not dare to stay in the same room. Specifically speaking, 5 years after their breakup, in 1974, promoter Bill Sargent offered $50 million for a reunion concert, yet they immediately refused. Not to mention, Muhammad Ali in partnership with Amron offered them $200 million for a charity fund reunion. But the attempt failed again, and witnessing another glimpse of the legendary band remained a distant dream.
Had the four of you ever gotten together since the Beatles broke up? Had there ever been a time where you were all four in the same room, like actually doing something together?
No.
Never?
No.
Fortunately, Paul is still keeping the spirit of the Beatles alive.
To the stage, the mighty, the one and only Mr. Ringo Starr.
Imagine what would have happened if all the four members of the Beatles were together with Paul. Well, the picture would have been something extraordinary. So, what are your views about the breakup of the Beatles? Do you think Yoko Ono is the only reason behind their breakup? Let us know in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and press the like button if you liked this video. Thank you so much for watching.